GreatScores interval guide. Our interval guide comes in 3 parts. The main part, part 1, which is all the theory behind the intervals. And we have 2 further parts, one consisting of worksheets, which will be very useful if you are in the unfortunate position to have to do exams relating to this, and also a compendium, which includes all the possible basic intervals you might find in a specific key for all 12 keys. So for example, in this case for C major, the page I've got up here, we've got all the perfect and major intervals, then all the augmented intervals, and all the diminished and minor intervals as well. You can buy all 3 together or each separately, whichever you prefer. Now, why would you want to learn about intervals? An interval basically is just the distance between 2 keys. That's what we call an interval in music. Now, why would you want to know the distance between 2 keys? Well, it's quite useful because all music basically consists of intervals. Chords do and melodies do. And in the context of a chord, this will be quite easy to explain. So if I take, for example, a basic C major chord, you can see there's a distance here between the C and the E, and the E and the G. Now, we could call that distance something. Now, how are we going to measure that? Well, we can't take a tape measure to the keyboard, because that wouldn't work, and what if you're playing a saxophone? That wouldn't work at all. So what we do is we use the smallest possible unit you could use, which is very easy to see on the keyboard. It's from one key to the next, from here to here, and you call that a semitone, sometimes also called a half step. So this is a semitone. That's a very important word because we'll be using that a lot for the intervals. Careful though, from here to here is also a semitone. Some people think this is not a semitone because there's a key missing. There's no key missing there really. This is also a semitone from E to F. Now, if we want to measure our basic distances, we could basically come up with a system where we go, well, from C to D, for C major, we call that interval of 2 because it's 2 keys, so we call it a second. Therefore, from C to E would be a third. From C to F, a fourth. C to G, a fifth. C to A, a sixth. And C to B, a seventh. This would be an eighth, but it's also called an octave. You have one scenario where you go from C to C, and you call that a unison. Those are the basic intervals as we know them. Now, if we look at the chord of C major, we can see that distance from here to here seems to be 3 keys, 3 basic keys. So we could call that a third. And we can see that from E to G is also 3 keys. So that's also a third. So I guess C major chords are made up of 2/3. But there's a slight problem here, you might have spotted it already, is there's actually fewer keys between here and here than there are between here and here. So we will have to go back to our semitones to measure this precisely. So let's try this now. Pretend we're walking from here to here. So 1 step, or semitone, 2, 3, 4. I'll do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the distance from C to E is precisely 4 semitones. Let's measure this distance now. 1, 2, 3. So this is smaller. This is 3 semitones. So we've got some kind of small third here and some kind of big third there. In fact, what you call these two is a major third, which consists of 4 semitones, and a minor third, which consists of 3 semitones. And what we've just learned is the basic DNA, the makeup of any major chord. So you could now go, using that principle, and construct a major chord on any note. So if we go to F, for example, using the same principle we've just learned, we have to go up 4 semitones, 2, 3, 4, which takes us to A, and then another 3, 2, 3, and that gives us a lovely F major chord. So this is a very good example where intervals become very useful because you will learn how to construct chords. Quite a useful way to recognize intervals when you're listening to them is of thinking of that interval as the opening of a famous tune. For example, a major second, and I'll refer to this in our guides of course, is the beginning of Frère Jacques. Or there are other examples, Happy Birthday, Silent Night, EastEnders theme. many examples. Very famously, this interval, which is a tritone, is the opening of The Simpsons. So that's the trick you use when you want to work out an interval when you're hearing it. Obviously there's a big benefit to that, in that you can actually go and work out melodies that way. It helps an awful lot. I'm going to leave it at that for the intervals for today, because there's a lot more you can learn about it. But that is all covered in our guide, all the in-depth stuff, the more complicated stuff. There are several levels you can learn about intervals too, and today it was the basic principle. If you understand that, that helps an awful lot. But if you want to know more, please look at our guide.